Hello, family members. I hope you've had a nice day today. Oh, golly. I want to tell you a story about one of my favorite YouTubers, the legendary Dan Olson of Folding Ideas. In his follow-up to his seminal work, Line Goes Up, about NFTs, that was like the hottest video a few years back, he made a video about Decentraland, which is another crypto related project. And essentially it's like a 3D world that's supposed to represent a new internet that's going to replace the internet we already have, which is hilarious. But, people bought in, literally bought in. They bought plots of virtual land in this Decentraland project because they believed in it, right? And it's just not good. It doesn't work really well for anything, and Dan points out there's a lot of similar projects that have been proposed. But the difference between Decentraland and a lot of those is that they had activated the trap card of falsifiability. Meaning they actually made something. And so it's possible to evaluate whether it's good or not. Whereas when something's just a proposal, it's debatable whether or not an idea is good. And I think that really applies to what's going on in the United States right now. I want to go through that. So let's do that. I think it's a lot easier to be the opposition party, just politically, for the same reason. The party that is in power, it is possible to objectively look at it and say they're doing what they said they were going to do, or they're not doing what they said they were going to do. And so it's a lot easier to be the party saying what they're doing is wrong, pointing out things that the other party is doing wrong, and then saying, oh, well, I'd be doing that so much better. That's the Donald Trump tactic, back when when Russia first invaded Ukraine, he's like, oh, it would have never happened if I was president. Now he's president. Let's see. Let's see if he gets those Russians out of Ukraine. I'm not holding my breath. But it's not just that. There's so many policies that, once implemented, are just comically bad. And the thing about people like Donald Trump, you got to remember, people like Donald Trump have failed their way upwards because they had resources. They have, enough money and connections to be able to find somebody that's kind of willing to go along with whatever it is that they want to do. And it's only gotten worse, the last few years, maybe the last decade or so. His ability to do that has snowballed out of control in a lot of ways. And the funny thing about it is, when you make ignoring reality your main policy, eventually reality is going to show up and slap you in the face, And that's what we've been seeing the last few days, the last few weeks, the last couple of months, the first 2 months of Donald Trump's term. We've been seeing over and over again them trying to implement things that they think are great ideas, that they have convinced themselves are great ideas. And then it just comically doesn't work the way they said it would, I think the tariffs thing is one. Although the reporting on that is completely botched. Let me point out to you, he left a 10% tariff across the board on everything except for China. And that does mean that we have much higher tariffs from a lot of different places. Just because he put a 90-day pause on the like ridiculously high ones that he first proposed does not mean that he actually backed off on tariffs entirely. He still has raised tariffs. We're still going to see price hikes. You still should be doing what I said in my practical guide to tariff buying video. Make sure your pantry is full. You know, make sure all of the non-perishable things that you can stock up on, that you've stocked up on them. Okay? Please? Just take care of yourself. All right. But, you know, it's that same like fuck around and find out mentality. We are in the find out portion. And that is the trap card of falsifiability. When the inevitable, unexpected consequences of poorly thought out decision making are laid bare in front of the entire world, there's no way to avoid that. Now, you can get your most fervent supporters to ignore it or think it's not important. But, you know, people who are willing to see what's going on, which is increasingly more and more people in this country, can't help but see it. You know, the price of our eggs have not gone down, has it? You know? In fact, we have no reason to think that anything's going to happen but price increases. But that wasn't the promise, right? Donald Trump could very easily promise during the campaign he was going to bring prices down. But he can't actually do that. And that's why we're where we're at. You know, he keeps saying, oh, we're going to reduce all this waste and it's going to be fine. And then finding out that, oh, if you fire an entire division without even knowing what they do, that it might actually be really bad. You know, I think back to when Elon Musk first bought Twitter and started just like demolishing all of these moderating rules and things like that. There was some speculation that this was going to cause him problems because Twitter had made some pretty strict deals with the government about moderation. And, you know, like, I wonder if the only reason they really got away with that because he's him, you know? He was able to distract people. But you can only distract people so far. Like, that's the thing. I watched a guy talking about Tesla stocks and Elon a few weeks back. And he was like, you know, people might think, why the heck, you know, would we even want to have Elon associated with Tesla? You know, all this volatility, you know, he's turning people against the brand, blah, 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 blah. But this is based on the stock price, not the actual cars themselves, mind you. He said that the stock price for the amount of revenue that Tesla brings in is such an inflated amount, and that's essentially the Elon premium. And even losing billions of dollars still means that the people who have that Tesla stock are way better off with Elon there than not there, because the stock is still inflated over what it should be, you know, based on fundamentals, which is supposed to be what stock prices are based on. Of course, they're not. You know, this whole meme coin thing is hilarious to me because it's just NFTs again. It's NFTs, but with a different name. The name NFT became associated with a poor product or a scam or something that you don't need to worry about. And so they just rebranded it and called it meme coins, and it's essentially the same thing. It works the same way in that it doesn't work. It's just gambling on nothing, literally nothing. And the only people that make money are the insiders. So, don't invest in meme coins, please. Please. Not that many people I know have enough money to actually invest in things these days, it seems like. Yeah. It's like after Roe v. Wade got overturned, there was always this argument from the pro-life, aka anti-abortion crowd, that it really wouldn't even make that big a difference. People would be able to go out of state where it was legal if they needed or wanted one. There would be exceptions for the life of the mother, blah, blah, blah. And then when it actually was overturned and we saw how it actually worked, once that trap card of falsifiability was activated, it immediately showed how even certain states having abortion restricted or banned was going to kill women and girls. And I mean, one of the very first early cases to speak to that was that 10-year-old girl from Ohio that had to go to another state so she could get an abortion and not have to carry her rapist baby to term. And that was right after all that happened. The first overturning of Roe v. Wade there. Texas, there's so many stories of women in Texas that break my heart. Or other states where, even here in Florida. And so you hear about women who their baby is dead and they are forced to carry a dead baby around until their body goes into some sort of medical distress, and risking their lives, risking their ability to have children in the future, all to save a baby that's not alive anyway. Now, obviously, they like to say they're Christians and their Bible tells them that da-da-da-da-da. I'm a Christian too. When the Bible says to me that life begins with the first breath. But, being a Christian is all about ignoring the parts of the Bible that you don't find very useful to you, apparently. If you're an evangelical, at least. When something is just a theory, like libertarianism, when it's just a theory, it's easy to argue one way or the other. I think crypto is a good sign that libertarianism is just fundamentally flawed. I think that crypto was an attempt to make a space where there could be a fully government-free world, or as little as possible, But the thing is, as much as the government deserves our criticism, and we should always be willing to call out our government and be critical of our government, it is necessary. I've been watching a lot of disaster videos lately. I wonder why. And one thing that I see a lot of stories based on is just failure to regulate appropriately. The regulations will be in place to prevent some sort of horrific tragedy, but then they're just overlooked or ignored or neglected. Like, there was a story I watched recently about a Japanese roller coaster incident. And essentially, what had been happening was it exposed that there was a nationwide problem with under-regulation, under-enforcement of regulation. And because it wasn't being enforced, there were multiple places that had not been inspected at all and couldn't afford to operate safely and had to go out of business. And we have to be able to be safe, right? And that's not going to happen with lax regulations, with people not enforcing. I think they said there'd been like 10 years and they'd never inspected the dang thing the way that they should, even once. And then it, falls off a track and kills somebody. Like that's the kind of thing that can be easy to overlook in a moment and so consequential. I mean, the story that I read, it ended with that particular park going out of business because they couldn't take the time to, be safe up front. They lost everything. They activated the trap card of falsifiability. They asserted to themselves that the safety factors didn't really matter that much. And then they got proven wrong. Right now, we have quite a lot of kind of political disarray. Because, I think the far right has gotten what it wanted. And sometimes when you get what you want, it is the worst thing possible for you. And so they're flailing. And then you have just everything else going on. And the Democrats are not stepping up. I don't know why they decided to die on the hill of Israel is not committing a genocide, but they did. And now they want to blame their voters. They said, we have to have this position. If we don't keep the positions that we have right now, if we don't stay this course, we're gonna lose. And they did that. And they still lost. And I do find it very telling that essentially they lost because the people that came out extra to vote for Biden in the last cycle just stayed home. Because the Democrats forgot that, they weren't holding the United States hostage and able to do whatever the heck they wanted. And people just had to vote for them because they were better than the alternative. It's their job to convince people to vote for them. And people just didn't vote. They activated the trap card of falsifiability. They asserted they didn't need to listen to the left wing of their voters, and they were proved wrong. And they're right now trying to rewrite history and make it so that, we went too far left. No, you didn't. You didn't listen to the left, and that's why you lost. Over and over again, we keep seeing this. We keep seeing the people in government trying to implement ideologically driven policies and ignore reality. And that doesn't end well for anyone. Now, of course, the frustrating thing about all this trap card of falsifiability thing is the worst consequences of what the Republicans are doing will be borne by the most vulnerable in society. It won't be borne by the people who are making these stupid choices. It's going to be borne by people like me and my friends. You know, over and over again, we keep having people try to bend reality to what they think it ought to be. And you can fight with reality as much as you want. And you can try to get reality to bend to your will as much as you want. You might even get away with it for a while. But eventually you'll get to a place where your claims are falsifiable. And you will fall. And you're going to take people along with you. Maybe they're the ones you fall on top of. I find it telling that it starts with trans people and then it starts spreading. You start talking about trans people and you start talking about drag queens who are not all trans. Then it's gay people generally. Then it starts being making fun of asexuals like J.K. Rowling did just recently. It's a growing thing to ostracize a particular minority group in order to advance your own personal causes. Because you will be proven wrong and you'll have to escalate. The goalposts always have to be moved because you're not working from a foundation of real truth, of genuine rigor, of good faith. And you can fake it till you make it, but once you make it, what are you going to do? How are you going to handle being in a position that you're completely ill-prepared for? And I know I'm going to be watching some probably fairly satisfying GOP fails coming up. But it's not funny. You know, I don't want my country to fall apart. I don't want the vulnerable people in my society to lose Medicaid or food assistance or housing assistance. I don't want our bridges to collapse or our buildings to collapse because we couldn't have good code enforcement. I don't want to see our infrastructure crumble. I don't want to see our standing in the world disintegrate, but it is. All of it is falling apart right in front of our eyes. There's not really much we can do about it other than protest and community organize. All the things that we need to be doing all the time. Community organization is the most important thing right now. Because that's one thing that isn't falsifiable. when you're helping the people around you at a local level, on a very practical level, there's nothing to falsify. We need to be more thoughtful in how we evaluate truth. Neil deGrasse Tyson said, just because something is true doesn't mean that it's right. And that really stuck with me. It's true. It is very easy to make an argument that sounds reasonable. That doesn't make it right. That's why evidence matters. That's why reality matters. But we have let this foster in our country and grow this idea that you can fake it till you make it, and that's not a problem. That being able to get away with something is good enough. We don't hold ourselves to high standards of integrity. We don't hold ourselves to being the greatest nation in the world, though we demand everyone say that we are. You know? Like, it's kind of silly when you think about it. Like, if you want to believe that you live in the greatest nation in the world, you have to make sure that you actually do. And that is not part of the equation whatsoever, which is just very interesting to me. But anyway, family members, I better hop off here. I think I got my point across. I hope you have a nice day today. I already said that. I don't know why I'm repeating myself. Oh, Kimmy wants to say hi, though. You want to say hi, Kimmy? You want to say hi, Kimmy? You want to say hi? You say it? Oh, sit. Sit, sit, sit. Sit, sit, sit. Come on. Sit, sit. Good girl. Say, I'm a good girl. That's not falsifiable, is it? No. Take care of yourself, family members. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.